Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Shore Podcast, episode 339. I looked back real quick because I got a little cat sleeping behind me. I was curious if me introducing the show would awaken him. He seems completely knocked out, so we'll see. Maybe he'll get up and leave. Welcome. This is the first normal episode of the year. Thank you if you listened to my last episode, Game of the Year, despite it being kind of all over the place. I had fun with it. I enjoyed it. And I think it's always kind of fun to highlight games and what they did best and things like that, and not worry too much about the quality overall. I think it's like focusing on particular angles, I think, is kind of fun. So it's one of those things that I don't know if people really get upset about, like Game of the Year lists anymore. I feel like there used to be a while where people would be like, oh, there's a defined list of what actually fits on the list. But I think now, I wonder, well, it could be I just disconnected from everything, right? Because I don't really focus too much on communities who are in kind of that main, kind of gaming discussion space that would be reading like an IGN.com or something like that, right? But also, I think there is just a lot more diversity in terms of the people playing games and stuff like that, and the types of games they're playing and the games they're focusing on, and the number of games out there means that there's just large swaths of the industry that you aren't really covering when doing a Game of the Year list, unfortunately, just the nature of the scale, right? So I'm curious, like, how I would be interested to see if like somebody did like a how Game of the Year has evolved over the years, even if it's just looking at like one outlet, right? Like what did IGN and GameSpot do for Game of the Year for 20 years now or something like that, right? I don't know how far back IGN's website goes or however long it is. Let's see, what is it? It's 2024, 2004. Yeah, they were definitely around in 2004. Yeah, maybe 25 years then of history, something like that. I think it started out as like N64.com or something like that. That sounds right. I don't know. Don't listen to me. We're here to talk about video games, so don't listen to me talk about video games. Turn this podcast off right now because what I'm about to say is about Final Fantasy XI. I'll keep it short. Just a quick little Final Fantasy XI update. So I have gotten most of my classes kind of where I want them to in terms of level. There's one class I have not. That is Black Mage, level 25. And then at that point, I'm going to kind of do the big first, like, I guess you could say boss of the game. It's like the first time you really go and fight a challenging battle with a group of people, kind of thing. So, and it is all kind of level capped, so you can't really just like have someone like, force you past it. I'm kind of the mind that might be a good stopping point for now. I mean, to be clear, I am still really enjoying Final Fantasy XI, but I think that would be the point that I probably want to... Well, here's my thought on it. I have that Final Fantasy XI video I did, right? And initially when I did that video, I think I had different ideas of where I would be at with Final Fantasy XI now. And it has taken a lot longer than I thought I would take. And also I viewed it from many more angles than I thought I would view it as well. So I'm thinking that maybe centering a first video that's around like the first 30 levels might be a good video overall. And then I don't have to necessarily... just kind of like say, next week we talk about party dynamics, something like that, right? I don't know. We'll see. I want to kind of try to make that video a little bit more rounded, right? So if you just watch that one video, you've gotten something kind of complete. And if you don't come back for the next one, if there's a next one, right, you'll be fine. So we'll see. Accessibility is really important for me on videos, which is probably why like I worry so much about like the Somerbringer video and stuff. But I really want to make sure a video is meaningful on its own, but also, is accessible to people. And there's kind of different ways you can handle that, I think, where, in the case of the Somerbringer video, ultimately, I think the initial reaction you'll have is like, oh, I need to explain everything about the Xeno series up to this point. And then I think the real answer is that you need to not explain the Xeno series. You need to summarize it very quickly and try to basically get people on board with your video topic very quickly, in my opinion. So does that mean they have like a deep understanding of what Monolith Soft and Xeno are? No, but they have enough information to get the video across. Like, what information do I need to provide to them? Especially since there's so many other videos out there that do the full like Monolith Soft coverage thing. So anyways, that Somerbringer video got like 5,000 views. It's kind of finally steadied out a bit, but that is way more than I'd ever expect for a video in the first like 2 weeks or whatever it was. So thank you again for everybody who watched it. Big thanks if you gave me feedback. That was the big thing I was looking for in that video because I really didn't know what people would think of it. So hearing feedback, detailed feedback from people from all sorts of angles, I think was really helpful to me understanding like how everybody received it, right? And generally, I think people received it good. And my goal really was to have less than 40% dislikes. So, 60% likes overall, which you're like, that sounds kind of low. But guess what? My Xeno videos, about 50%. So that was my hope, but we'll see. Anyways, I didn't release some of our show today this week, by the way. I kind of skipped over that. So before we get any too much deeper, I just want to say we'll be talking about a little bit more Xeno, not a lot more Xeno, but a little bit more Xeno here. Just some rumors about some stuff that came up, so you might be familiar. We're going to talk about a crazy video game. I don't know. Horse derby train builder. Okay. we'll get back to that. But we're talking about a horse derby train builder today. And then Jillian's Corner. I feel like it's been a little bit since we had a Jillian's Corner. So Jillian's Corner will be here on this show, ready to go. And then guess what? We're going to talk about a video game. I actually have space in the show to talk about a video game, and we're going to talk about Star Fox Adventures. And hopefully it goes well, because I tried recording something separately for this and stumbled over myself a ton. But guess what? Part of the reason I like talking about video games on a podcast is because in a podcast, I kind of just have to keep talking. So I'll push through it. Where if I'm recording privately, it's very tempting to stop and try over again, which is part of why I stopped doing casual reviews the way I did. So we'll see. Kira Pop Princess, I also kind of wrapped up that whole thing as well. But I think I'll try to record something separately. And if it doesn't go well, I will talk about it on the podcast again later. We'll see how things go. I don't really know. But I did kind of start editing together more casual reviews. Some of them are unique to the One Control Port Plus channel. Some of them are from the podcast. So those are currently going to go up at a once a month pace. And then if I do set up one for every month this year, I'll start working backwards and start setting up 2 a month, going from December up to whenever I'm at that time, kind of thing. And I think that will be kind of the goal with the casual reviews, is to at least have one a month this year. And then if I get extra in there, to have 2 a month, cool, kind of thing. So yeah. Anyways, back to the kind of quick updates here real quick. I know we sidetracked for a second there, but I went ahead and I don't think I talked about this podcast. Sorry if I talked about this already. It's been a little bit. I played Akazuken Cha-Cha for the PCFX. I talk about it on the PCFX Fan Club podcast, the next episode of that coming out. So if you're interested in that, let me know. It's a really interesting game, though, because it is an anime that's based off the first season of the Akazuken Cha-Cha franchise. And so what that means is that the board game has a really weird progression to it, and kind of really weird abilities for characters, because they're based heavily on the show. And it's less about whether a ability is useful and more about the novelty of abilities and things like that. So I think there's a lot there. There's still a lot more I need to do in terms of playing it, mostly because it's like a 6-hour game. At least right now, my experience is about 6 hours on it. And it has no saves. So I need to kind of figure things out. And I don't really understand what's happening at the moment. I need to take it more slow this next time and probably play all 6 characters on the field. Because right now, like, all the AI go, and I just can't tell what's happening as the AI kind of like blasts through different sections of the games and things like that. So there's that. And then I also put up a post on the PCFX Fan Club Ko-fi, talking about PCFX sales numbers, basically just some research around that. And it wasn't like me finding new sales numbers or anything like that. It was more of me taking the numbers that were out there and trying to find their sources and just try to get an idea of like how credible they are, really. I'd say most of them are fairly credible, if not, let's say, what's the word? Contradicting. Some of them are claiming different numbers at different times, but I think regarding the sales numbers of the PCFX, they're all fairly trustworthy numbers. There's one number in particular that is off, and I'm still trying to see if I can figure out what that number is, but at the moment I'm kind of relying on somebody else to get back to me about that, so we'll see. But yeah, so that post is up there over on the Ko-fi if you want to go check that out. I've been trying to post stuff up on the PCFX Ko-fi from time to time. That is a little bit more like research and archivy stuff, so if you're interested in that, the PCFX Fan Club Ko-fi has that for you. My personal Ko-fi on the One Control Port channel is very much more focused on like, hey, here's some behind scenes about how I feel about writing about video games and videos, right? I think I said before, in some ways I kind of view it as like a weird investor relationship kind of thing. Just like, hey, you're gonna get a little more insight into how the pizza's made, baby. rather than just like content kind of thing. So that is how I've been positioning it for now. So anyways, let's get into some news. Got 2 news stories here. Well, 1 news story, 1 video game that I want to talk about. The news story is a rumor. I believe it is from zippospeaks.blogspot.com, which, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I know Zippo. People had very mixed feelings on whether Zippo was accurate in any regard. I don't know. In a lot of ways, I don't really care because this news story, whether it happens or not, doesn't really matter to me for the most part. Xenoblade Chronicles X is supposedly getting a full remake on the Switch successor. So this, if you don't know, Xenoblade Chronicles X was the Wii U Xenoblade Chronicles that at the time we thought was the sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles, but ultimately ended up being more of a spin-off than anything. Whether that was planned at the time or not is a whole other thing. And I think there are some interviews saying that from the beginning it wasn't planned to be like a straight continuation of the Xenoblade franchise per se. But it is one of those games that, hasn't been ported over. And I think the problem with Xenoblade Chronicles X is it has a lot of very specific integration with the Wii U. And also, I think that game had a lot more problems than a lot of other Wii U games that came out. I think a lot of people really put Xenoblade Chronicles X on a pedestal. And I think as they should in a lot of ways. But Xenoblade Chronicles X is a very good game. But it was a game that was, I think, kind of bit off more than it could chew. And it ended up with a situation where there's a ton of content. However, the world itself kind of feels incomplete in terms of just the storytelling, how things kind of come together, the progression. There's a lot of like quality of life things that are kind of weird and out of place that they never quite fix and things like that. And there's like a lot of Miiverse integration. The online multiplayer was this really strange thing. There's a lot of things about the game that feel like at some point somebody had to make compromises. In a lot of ways, you might be able to think of it as kind of like Xenogears in terms of how it handles its storytelling, but seeing that more from like a gameplay model. Except for maybe Xenogears kind of falls off a little harder on the back half kind of thing. But, it's one of those rare cases where Monolith Soft got really overly ambitious with their game design over their storytelling kind of thing. And so, while I think the game is great on its own, I'm going to guess, given just the amount of work that needed to be done to get that thing disconnected from the Wii U, essentially, in terms of feature set, because we use the gamepad pretty heavily. It just needs to have a lot of work done. And I think in that process, I think they're going to go and rework the visuals and things like that if they touch this game. Like before this this rumor, I even felt this way of just like reworking the visuals number one. And then hopefully kind of after that, reworking quality of life. And then if the thing that I didn't really think about before that is a little more on my mind now is that if this is a full remake, again, rumors, speculation, all that stuff, but if it is the full remake that they're claiming, and again, the word remake gets kind of thrown around in weird ways. Some people probably say Xenoblade Chronicles 1 Definitive Edition is a remake when it's really kind of like a new coat of paint on an old game with some quality of life changes, which is kind of what I was expecting with a Xenoblade Chronicles X re-release. If it's something like that, that would make a lot of sense too. But if they did try to like really tear that game apart and bring it back together, I think they really could do a lot of trimming and a lot of just kind of like tightening up everything. I think they would add new content as well, just to kind of incentivize people. But I think it would ultimately be better for that game to rein in its scope a little bit. Not so much in terms of real world space in that game, but more of just kind of refine the storytelling of it, make the mission structure a little bit more friendly, integrate character stories in the mission structure and things like that. I think all that stuff would have been better kind of thing. So, in the end, a Xenoblade Chronicles X remake is not something I'm excited for. And I worry that if that comes out, and whatever new content is in it is buried in the game itself, I will probably never play it. One of the only reasons I bought Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, the remake of the Xenoblade Chronicles 1, is the new content was a separate story mode that you could play separately. So I literally bought the full priced video game to get like a 10-hour little side DLC experience, which I'm okay with that. Like at the end of the day, I'm happy with that experience. The money amount for me for games doesn't really tie to hours. It's more about like how that experience was, and revisiting Xenoblade Chronicles in that very like tight form was really nice. It's the way I feel about a lot of DLC today, where I like going to DLC for games 10 years after the fact, because it's just like a really nice, small and tight way to like explore a game again, especially if it's standalone, you know? You're not just like loading up a save file from 10 years ago with a bunch of junk and stuff, right? You can start fresh, but it's like this experience that kind of assumes you generally know what's going on, right? And they can kind of get you up to pace really quick, and it's not super deep. It's just this little pocket-sized experience. I'm really... My opinion on DLC has really shifted over the years. I think maybe if you couldn't tell during the 2023 Game of the Year show, you know, I had a pretty heavy emphasis on DLC with Squatty to the Beach, with Saz Heads or Tails, and while not necessarily DLC, you know, Hackhawks and Xenoblade Chronicles or Xenosaga 3 kind of being its own little tiny fun thing as well. And there's a lot of things I would like to explore a little bit more with DLC, I think, going forward. But it's pretty rare that when a game is out, like when it's freshly out, I want to touch that DLC. It's usually something I kind of come back to years later, in a lot of times. And especially like additive DLC to games, like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 story content, when they added that, I played that and I was not a huge fan, and it's the least memorable content of that game when it comes to the like non-future redeemed story stuff, because there's the DLC that's future redeemed, that's basically its whole video game. But the content added to the core-based game is Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I just do not care about. I think that's true in most cases with DLC, is that I just don't care about it. It's like, especially with RPGs, there's so much side content in those games already, I don't really need a lot more, right? There can be good DLC, like it can be designed better, I will say, but I just think like what I need usually is like a self-contained experience, and it's usually something I come back to later. And I kind of, in a lot of ways, view it as its own game, just kind of built within the framework and the structure of the previous game, right? I prefer that over like a sequel, honestly. If you're going to make a sequel that's basically the exact same video game, just give me a short little DLC pack. I'll be happy with that. Still be playing like what? Call of Duty. I don't know which Call of Duty is. I was about to like try to make a line based off like the evolution of Call of Duty, but I don't know how Call of Duty's evolved over the years. So, but it feels like at least like the most recent Modern Warfare games, you could kind of build on top of each other. And Modern Warfare 3, I think, is literally built on top of Modern Warfare 2 in terms of like even the installer and stuff like that, being like a portal you log into or something. And I think you have to have Modern Warfare 2 installed. I don't know for sure. It's one of those things that like people are kicking up so much dirt about Modern Warfare 3. It's hard for me to know like what was real and what was not at this point. Anyways, I don't really need that. But if it does happen, I think that's probably what would happen, or at least that would be my expectation. Again, I don't know anything, so like that's just me kicking the dirt around and being like, oh no, Xeno. Gotta say something about Xeno. I'm a Xeno fan, baby. Monolith Soft fan, Xeno fan, whatever you want to call me. Our follow-up story after this is a beautiful, amazing thing. Because this is like, I was talking to Fireweed, actually. I was checking in on him. And I was just like, this is a beautiful video game. It has like everything I want in a video game, and all the things also I know you guys don't want, but it is also like makes it even better because it is everything I want it to be. Sodatetsu, I think is how you pronounce it. It is a train racing simulator with a horse derby-esque racing mode. So basically, this game has you building trains. It's like a 3D model you kind of got to build. And your trains are NFTs, of course. They're actually 3D, though, which is actually kind of surprising for NFTs. Usually they're like little like JPEG cards or whatever. But in this case, they are 3D models. The point of them being NFTs, don't know, kind of don't care. But it features over 2,000 types of JR West vehicles. If you don't know, that's Japan Rail West. I don't know if Japan Rail owns like the copyright on their vehicle designs or something, but at least their website seems to claim that they are Japan Rail West vehicles. So I don't know how fitting that, how accurate they are or not, but anyways, but like it has like a little open world you can run around. It looks really rough. The lighting's real bad. It looks like a Dojin game in a lot of ways. But it also has like hand-drawn 2D art at times. And the main characters in the cast and stuff like that have a very like Yokai Watch feel to them. It has this really nice polished character art. However, those like 10 characters are like the only characters that have really a lot of focus on them in terms of art. Every other character seems to be AI generated, and like not in a like AI generated, make Yokai Watch AI generated art. They just, if you ever seen AI art, it's like this like semi-realistic anime with like, kind of weird color, weird lighting and stuff like that. And I always feel bad because like some people have this style, right? I don't know why AI art specifically has kind of leaned around this style, but like it just looks like that style. It doesn't try to meld into the game at all. But yeah. So yeah, it's like a little game. You just put together your trains. You have like a train track that races around on Rainbow Road and stuff. Sometimes just like a horse derby track. And just I guess depending on how you build your train, it depends on how it works in the race and if you win or not and stuff like that, right? So it was actually pretty neat. It launched in December, so it is already out, and the reviews were pretty mixed. There seems to be a lot of concern about the balance of the game, as far as I can tell, just from my brief skim over machine translated reviews. And then also, I think there was just like a confusion of exactly how the NFTs would work. And I think the reason there was confusion was because the marketplace actually isn't open until February. I think there was always like, I don't think them opening the marketplace is going to solve any of those problems per se, right? I think the weird thing with NFT games is I don't really understand the benefit in NFTs in terms of a game anymore. No one's really talking about that anymore. You don't have people being like, oh, don't worry, guys. Your Sodetsu trains, they'll import right into Pokemon someday, right? Nobody's doing that anymore, right? But so I think it's really focused around this like increasing value narrative. It's like increasing value of an asset, but I don't really understand what they're saying to back that up. If that's like a hollow promise at this point, right? I mean, I think it's a hollow promise at this point. But I don't know what their argument for it is. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying so much the actual value, but their argued value kind of thing. But they actually really say an episode of an anime, episode 0. I forget how long it was. I watched it though. It seems pretty budget, but like decently produced. Like there's like a Gunvolt anime that came out on 3DS forever ago, and I think they sold like a DVD or Blu-ray of it at a concert or something like that, and it has a very low budget look, and this looks better than that Gunvolt OVA, so they put a decent amount of money into it, I think. The story is pretty awesome. It's a kid whose dad was working in a train building facility, and then his dad dies, and then so the kid's like, initially he starts like as a little elementary school watching his dad watching his dad build the train, and his dad has a pocket watch, a big cartoonish pocket watch with like the yellow metal and like the clock in the middle, and in the train he built, there's a slot specifically for putting that pocket watch in for some reason, and so the kid was like all excited to put it in there. But anyway, so his dad dies, and the kid keeps his pocket watch. And while he's in like the funeral or whatever, I don't know what it's called in Japan, but like, they're paying respects to him, his body and stuff like that. Right. He hears like a little like noise, and a little cart with coal in it kind of pops up real quick. And he seems like really confused. So for some reason, I don't know why, it seems like he goes back to the train company that his dad worked in and like is hacking their systems. Maybe there's a bunch of people yelling in the background, so I don't know if they're like coming after him or what. But he's hacking into the system, and the pocket watch reacts, and he gets transported into a train building fantasy world where people build trains and race them on horse tracks. So it is very exciting. It's one of those things that just like, that's a video game I want to exist, and also I really want it to have NFT integration, not because I'll play it, not because there's value, but a game like that needs NFT integration. So I was really excited about that. So starting the new year fresh with some NFT news kind of thing, everyone's favorite. But that was like, I was excited I will never play Sodatetsu. I don't want to play Sodatetsu really, but I love that it exists. Very Koin Musume of it and its spirit, right? All those people who like ignore NFTs now, you're missing out on the good stuff. These news articles, wonderful. So anyways, there's a, what's it called? Initial D game that's like, the racing game, street racing game kind of thing, and Tokyo Extreme Racing stuff. If I play something like that, I'll probably play Tokyo Extreme Racing someday, because Genki worked on that, and I have more relationship with Genki than Initial D or anything like that. But they actually have the Dojin group made a train street racing game as well, where you like do drifting and stuff on train tracks and stuff. And I think it's kind of a neat concept, because trains are inherently like really limited in a lot of ways, right? But trains are such like a big thing in Japan, or at least they previously were. I don't know the trajectory of train popularity in Japan. When I was in Japan, I was sitting at the front cart or whatever, and some kids came like barreling down there to go look at the train operator. I was just like, oh, okay. But yeah, it was kind of funny. Anyways, train games. Will I play one someday? Probably. Man, I would probably play a train horse racing game over a regular horse racing game, honestly. Maybe I do need to play Sodatetsu. Let's not worry about that. I forgot I had this on the list, but I didn't mark it properly, so it is here. Magician's Dead came out, launched in December, apparently launched very buggy. Developer has a bunch of like complaints and stuff that they're addressing, and they have apparently difficulty matchmaking and things like that. So I have not, if you don't know, Magician's Dead's like an arena fighter from the arcade from forever ago, but its gimmick was mostly motion controls based, so playing it on a PlayStation 4 is the version of the game that they have up and running now. Isn't really ideal for me. I am curious about checking it out. I think it is a paid retail boxed copy game though, so I don't think it's like free to play. I can just go download it and check it out. I might need to double check on that, but if it's free to play, I might just put some time into it while the player base is there. But if it's going to cost me like, $60 plus, whatever, shipping or whatever, or I guess you could do digitally, right? But, if it's going to cost me a bunch of money, I don't know if I'll do it. So it's time. It's here. We're in Jillian's Corner. Did you know you can support me on Ko-fi? I don't have the list up here of people who support me on Ko-fi, so I'm going to pull that up here real quick. But if you support me on Ko-fi, you can ask a question like Jillian has. Jillian, we are coming to the end of Jillian's questions. We have, thank you, Jillian, for your service. You have done us a real duty, service, and favor. We have got, let me see, 3 people, 4 people. Fireweed, thank you guys. Fireweed gets a double thanks, apparently. I didn't realize he donated twice in the last, actually, is that the last month? No, that's not the last one. Fireweed, you get 1 thank you, and you'll be happy about it. But Fireweed did donate in November as well, so thank you, Fireweed, for both your November and December donations. I appreciate that. Demodori donated, and then also Megament donated as well. Demodori donated twice. Demodori, I don't know if I thanked you for that second donation. Thank you, Demodori, for your second donation. I think I might have missed that one. I might have doubled up my brain entries on that. So anyways, thank you again for supporting me. I appreciate it. I hope you guys are enjoying the stuff's coming out. I know Stormbringer is a very specific thing for me, but I tried to make that video as accessible as possible. Any feedback from people who are donating to the Ko-fi about the Stormbringer video, if it's of your interest, things like that, always helpful to know. I love feedback. Let's just say that is like the one thing I feel like I never get. And so whenever I do get it, I'm like, oh yeah. Give me that feedback. So yeah, but I appreciate everybody who takes time out of their day to let me know their thoughts on videos and things like that as well. I've been rambling. Jillian's asking the question. Jillian asks, I'm clicking on stuff. Sorry if you're hearing me click. I opened something. No, get out of here. Get out of here, thing. Program, close. Anyways, Jillian asks, are there any older arcade games you like? I had to think about this one. I used to like older arcade games more, I think. I have been less invested in them. And one thing that I didn't do last year that I really wanted to, and unfortunately I had to wipe my whole OBS setup recently, so my work on setting up a stream setup for this unfortunately died. But I really wanted to do like more arcade-oriented streams, and I just think mentally I'm just not where I need to be for that right now. I think I would probably need to. I think I need significant social changes in my life to get back to the point where I was ready to stream pretty frequently. Right now, I feel like I'm keep pretty busy, and I'm always happy to talk to people. But at the same time, like when I've talked to a ton of people at the end of the day, it's hard for me to go and stream and talk to people there as well. So, and that's not anything, for any of you to worry about individually. That's my own problem. So, but I really wanted to play more and stuff and that kind of thing, but never really got around to it. So I don't know if that's a plan still in the books. It kind of fell off. I kind of stopped talking about it because I wasn't sure if it's going to go forward. And I think at this point I can say right now those plans have kind of fallen through. So I would like to eventually. But as a child and a young adult, I had some arcade games that I liked, older arcade games. Space Harrier is the common one for me. It is very, I don't know what it is. It's like very fast paced. Presentation's really flashy. I played it in Shenmue initially in the arcade there. Which was like a nice novelty on its own, but I've always really enjoyed Space Harrier as a whole. I've not played like a full cab. I think it has one of those tilt cabs. I could be wrong, but I believe it does. But I always really loved how it played. Just very easy pick up play, nice balance between challenging and stuff like that, and it moves really fast. Everything's like really kind of clear and visible. Each of the stages have like its own unique like obstacles and things like that, which I appreciate. I think it's just a lot done with a little in Space Harrier in a lot of ways, but it's also a game that, I think was kind of pushing, I don't know for sure, but I think it was kind of like that kind of like scrolling 3D look was kind of more novel with Space Harrier, but I think it really benefited from the speed versus a game that has like polygons and stuff like that. Even something like, Star Wars Arcade, that's another game that is not on this list, but I really like Star Wars Arcade, goes a little slow. I think what Star Wars Arcade has over Space Harrier, though, is Star Wars Arcade's voice clips, I think, do a really good job of complementing the whole movie experience of you are playing the Star Wars movie. And I know, like, if you look at Star Wars Arcade visually, yeah, it's laughable to say that, right? But I think that game embodies the feel of a trench run really well, right? I think the same thing with the Battle of Hoth and things like that. Although I think maybe the GameCube game maybe did a little bit better with the Battle of Hoth. I don't know for sure. I haven't played in a long time. But yeah, I think that original Star Wars, the trench run kind of thing, it was all very, very, very fun. I think the asteroid belt's in the second game, or third game, I should say, because I think the second game's like a sprite-based game. But the original Star Wars Arcade, I think I'm always split on the two vector graphics Star Wars Arcade games. I think they're both great games. They both have their own strengths, but I think the latter one maybe is like a more polished experience. But I think maybe the set pieces that's used with it aren't as like iconic and exciting as the original Star Wars Arcade, but it's a very cool game in that regard. Bosconian, I liked Bosconian a lot. I know a lot of people think it's very slow, and I understand why, right? You have to kind of like aim your shots and things like that, and you're kind of in this open world where you're kind of going around this space, very like Rally X in a lot of ways, going around trying to blow up these ships and stuff like that, or these space stations rather, and it's a very cool game in that regard. I think the one problem Bosconian has is that each level doesn't really have a lot of variety in it, so you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, which is kind of, in some ways, a common thing with older arcade games, and part of the reason why I might struggle with those a little bit more. I really need to like be able to see the depth of a game, and sometimes that's through presentation. It can be in other ways as well, right? Like I think Space Harrier is a good example of a game that, like, while it does have presentational differences on each stage, I think ultimately it kind of more or less looks the same, right? And but I think they do a good job of keeping things feeling varied through different obstacles, different enemy types, and things like that. So Growl. There's not a lot to say about Growl other than I like the concept of it. I don't know. You're like a cowboy man and rescuing animals. That's about it. It's a beat 'em up cowboy man rescuing animals. Or maybe Indiana Jones type. I don't know. That's all I remember is rescuing a bunch of animals and there being very dumb voice clips in there. And I also really liked Magic Sword when I played that when they released it on the PlayStation 3 with Double Dragon, I believe. I think for Magic Sword, I think I like that kind of like short arcadey RPG system. And so especially because I think at around that time, was I playing Dragon's Crown at that time? I had a really negative reaction to Dragon's Crown, and I think arcade style, RPG style beat 'em ups kind of filled the hole that Dragon's Crown left for me. I don't know why. I have like a weird bias against Vanillaware games and things like that. It's a very strange thing, but I've not liked any Vanillaware game that I've played very much. I think there's a lot of, I don't know. So I think they look nice. I think their gameplay is often very boring though. But anyways, thank you again, Jillian, for your question. Thank you again, everyone, for supporting me on Ko-fi. I appreciate it. Now it's time. Wrap up the show with some Star Fox Adventures. Ooh, I played this game. Star Fox Adventures. I don't know why, but I just like woke up one morning and I was like, Star Fox Adventures is now something I'm going to play. I don't know what came over me. I woke up and I was like, Star Fox Adventures. And so within a couple days, I started Star Fox Adventures. So Star Fox Adventures is like, it's weird. It's an action adventure game that's more in line with Zelda than it is a Star Fox game, right? And if you don't know, this game was developed by Rare, so the people who made Banjo-Kazooie and things like that. And they're not usually the ones to make Star Fox games. This is their one experience, and it's one of the most weirdest games I've played in recent years. One of those reasons, if you have been tuned into the video game industry long enough, you'll know, is this game was not a Star Fox game in the first place. It was a game called Dinosaur Planet. And I think there is something to be said about how that puts this game in like a weird space in terms of like what Star Fox is. But I think it's also weird in the way that this game feels kind of caught between Rare's game design during like the Nintendo 64 era with like all the goofiness and things like that. But it also has like this really genuine attempt to do world building. And so it really tries to craft this world that feels like it wants you to take it seriously. But then there's like an Irish stone guy who shows up and he's like, oh, you want to go to the warp zone? Something like that, right? And so it's this really weird contrast where like it feels like a Banjo-Kazooie game in terms of tone. But when you think about like what it's trying to do from a world building perspective, it feels much more... I don't know how to put it. It's like very otherworldly in very strange ways. So it's a very, very bizarre game. So, when you think of Star Fox games overall, the gameplay experience you usually have is, largely, space flight stuff. Occasionally you'll get some games with some on-ground sequences and things like that, or some kind of like tank sequence or something like that. This game doesn't really have that. Flying is a part of this game, but it's really just kind of like tacked on as like a mini game. This game's actually kind of packed with a ton of mini games, and it kind of qualifies in that space of just, it's not very well made, in my opinion. It doesn't feel as good as like, Star Fox 64, but it's not the focus of the game. So I think that's fairly reasonable. Every single flying mini game is basically just fly through however many gold rings, and there's like a score counter. It just feels very un-Star Fox in how it's presented in a lot of ways, but it kind of has the shell of a Star Fox game on top of it. So the core game itself is really focused on exploration and puzzle solving, and it's a very open game in a strange way as well. So it feels very weird. So it doesn't really hold your hand all that much, but despite it being fairly open, it also has a lot of very clear narrow paths. So what you have is a lot of areas in the game that kind of have a central area that you're exploring, and then little tunnel systems that kind of come off of it. And the tunnel systems can literally be tunnel systems in some cases, but other times it's just like very narrow corridors. And it seems very like, if you know how video game design works, it definitely feels like, oh, we're hiding some loading zones here. But I think knowing that much is not really that important. There's just a lot of spaces in this game that you kind of tread over a lot, and it just feels very unnatural and its design and stuff like that. And again, it kind of goes at a contrast with this game that's like trying to build a world in a lot of ways. But because it has that more open design, what the key aspect is to navigating this world is basically finding various items and skills that basically act as keys to locked doors, right? So there's like this little jet pad you can kind of launch up using. There's like these little levers you can kind of hit. You have different like elemental shots, and things like that. And each of these kind of solve different problems in the worlds themselves. And some of them are a little bit more natural. I'd say most of them actually feel very unnatural. The puzzle system in this game like takes a very Zelda approach where it's like, oh, you want to hit the switch on the wall, but you're like in the middle of like a like snow forest or whatever, and then just like this very mechanical switch is just like sticking out of a tree for like no reason. You hit it, and then like this rock kind of just like comes out of the water in a really strange and bizarre way that it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. So there's a lot of things about this world that just doesn't feel very real. It feels very, very video gamey in a lot of ways. And this is also true, I think, in how the dialogue plays out and how things are communicated to the player, because I think they have a hard time finding ways to really direct you where you need to go. So very rarely does it feel natural in terms of like what your next objective is. It often feels like you're asking characters in the game to kind of figure it out, and they have to tell it to you in a very video gamey kind of way. Slippy is kind of your main hint system, and he'll sit there and kind of walk through what you should be doing next. And sometimes that is often very clear, so you don't need to worry about it that often. But there are definitely moments in the game where, like, for example, there's like these weeds you have to kind of get off a tree, and you need to kind of put them out. And if you use a variety of different attacks on them, it just destroys these weeds. But if you hit them with your rod, it puts out, they're called fireweeds, so they're all on fire. If you hit them with your rod, it puts the fire out. But you would think like using the ice spell would put the fire out, but no, it just blows up the weed. So it's like strange things like that, just like weird, illogical design that doesn't really, I think, fit naturally with like what the player is trying to do in a lot of ways. But I don't think it's bad though. I think it's just very video game focused. And I think the reason why it stands out so much in this particular game is Star Fox Adventures has a very like spiritual feel to it. There's these very like, I guess like if you're familiar with Crystal, right? Crystal's this very like, mystical character in a lot of ways, right? She rides a flying dinosaur. She has like a staff of magic power that Fox uses to fight in this game. He doesn't have his blaster or anything like that. And their whole thing is like, oh, Fox, you'd shoot too many people, which is a really weird way to put that, but sure. But yeah, he gets a staff to go beat up a bunch of dinosaurs instead. But there's like this whole system that's about like finding these spirits, and these spirits have like these long trailing like spiritual things behind them. They talk to you in very, very kind of mystical ways. They're very serious in their implementation. And so it's this thing where you feel like they're trying to build this lore out and like really in ways that they really want you to take it seriously. And just the fact it clashes so much just makes it really odd and makes it very inconsistent feeling. But at the same time, I think that is also part of what makes this game stand out, is that harsh contrast between these kind of design philosophies of a Rare platformer kind of thing, and something that takes itself a bit more serious in a more Zelda style way, right? I do think that I am curious if like Cameo or something like that from Rare kind of fulfills this vision in the end. I never actually played Cameo on the Xbox 360. I'd be kind of curious if it takes it a bit more seriously, or if Rare kind of views the more like goofy elements of its dialogue and characters as like a essential part of its DNA. I kind of realized in playing this that I have not played a Rare game in forever. Like I played Banjo-Kazooie as a kid when I was like at people's houses or renting games or something like that, but really never revisited the developer. So kind of experiencing that style of game again is a very odd experience for me. That was kind of a surprise in some ways. But what I will say is this game, what it does do very well is its visuals. I think the Fox's fur effect looks really good. The environments look really great for early like 2002 GameCube game. I think it is an amazing looking game in a lot of ways that really holds up today, outside of kind of the more corridor designs kind of thing. So it looks really good, especially when you consider it started as like a Nintendo 64 game in a lot of ways. And I think that contrast is like really part of what makes it stand out though. Like it's a hodgepodge of Rare kind of collectathon platformer design where you're kind of going around these environments, collecting items that open up new doors and things like that. And there's like a currency in this game as well. But then it also has like the Zelda element to it where you're kind of going to these temples and dungeons and solving puzzles and things like that. And, I feel like there are a lot of games during the GameCube era that kind of honestly took this approach. But I wonder, I haven't played a lot of them. And I feel like with this game, there's probably something unique about its feeling of mashing up that kind of Rare world with kind of a Zelda, like Rare world and tone with a Zelda world and game design, right? It's very interesting in that regard. I say this is somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience with Rare, so maybe I'm misconstruing exactly like what was the inspiration here, but it definitely feels like this strange mishmash of two design philosophies that were kind of under the same roof with Nintendo, right? So but it's really, I think, interesting in that regard at the very least. So, yeah, I guess that's it. That's all I have to say about it. My cat is going crazy all of a sudden and is like meowing like crazy. I kind of stepped away for a moment trying to see if he'd calm down, give him some treats, but no, He's still meowing, so you might hear him before as I close up the podcast this week. He also, I have a low pantry door that he likes to swing open and close a lot, so you might hear that as well. But anyways, whether you hear that or not, thanks again for coming this week. OneControlWar.com is the website. Again, kind of the next to-do on the list is PCFX Fan Club podcast. We want to try to get that up as soon as possible, so hopefully we'll have that out sooner rather than later, but keep an eye on that feed. Keep an eye on OneControlWar.com, and anything I post will go up there. I haven't posted the PCFX sales numbers up there as of me talking into this microphone, but I think that will actually be something I do tonight before I wrap up. While I'm editing this podcast, I'll probably try to get that posted over and linked back onto the Ko-fi and stuff like that as well. But if you're interested in kind of PCFX research and stuff like that, I'm going to be trying to do more on that Ko-fi. So again, follow that if you are interested. Otherwise, I think it is at the moment that is kind of my key focus is PCFX. But that's kind of the benefit of the PCFX fan club, is that it makes me kind of come back to PCFX regularly and think about it again, right? But once I get off that, I initially was thinking about the Nintendo thing, but kind of after I realized kind of where I'm at with Final Fantasy 11 and kind of what kind of bow tie I'm kind of wrapping up on it in the short term here, I may focus mostly on the Final Fantasy 11 stuff, because I think I have a lot of thoughts on what I want to do with that video now that's going to be different from before. I think initially it won't look very different, but I think as it comes together, from what my initial plans were with the stuff that you guys didn't see in that trial video, that stuff will probably look very different overall. So yeah, but I hope you guys enjoy that. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks again here at the end of January. And then also, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I feel like we're in a new spot at the beginning of the year, and we can find our guidance this year. See where are we gonna go? Where are we gonna be? Where are we gonna end up? I don't know. We'll find out. But I hope you're able to join me on this journey through 2024. While we play video games and talk about video games. Mostly talk about video games. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great 2 weeks. Bye.